garage with Phonetix and BrainZ.
Easy.
Yes, mate. We're back with your month of garage gripes and moans from two old gits.
Oh dear, I'm the BrainZ from the Brain Cave, live and direct.
I am Phonetix, yet again without a mic arm. Eventually we'll get there with it.
I've joined you. I've joined you today. I'm there.
Yeah. We're both rocking the kind of old school look.
Yeah, indeed. How you been, mate? How's it all been going?
I'm all good, mate. Yeah, good. Very busy. Things are popping off. Can't complain. And I'm loving this weather, man. It's a very British way to start a podcast,
gorgeous.
Isn't it? By talking about the weather, but you know.
Yeah, it's lovely weather. It's been fantastic. It's been snazzy, mate. I graft from home, so it's been nice to be out in the garden on conference calls with India and Chicago and all the other beautiful things you have to do, working for the man.
With your dog running around you, I would imagine as well.
Yeah,
I have
pretty
visions
much.
of you in a deck chair in your garden with the dog just running around you like a lunatic.
Yeah, every now and again I just have to put it on mute and be like, "Come here!" Yeah, it's awkward. It's awkward to say the least. So you had a little guest slot today, I see.
I did. Do you know what? It's going to make you laugh. I actually had two guest slots simultaneously a while back. So I was booked in a while back to do a slot on Impact Show on Flex FM. That's like my home away from home. Been a little while since I've been down there, but like every 6 months or so, I pop down there, showcase a few new bits, have a little gas, much like we do with Impact about garage and that. But also, Strictly Flavour had asked me to do a guest mix for their Trickstar radio show, which is like the second Saturday of each month at 2 till 4. But I didn't twig when they asked me to do it. I just sort of said, "Oh, when do you need it by?" And they were like, "Oh, yeah, the 9th of June," because obviously they wanted it by the 9th so they could get the show prepared. So I thought I had in my head that it was going to air on the 9th. So, of course, I then get two sets of artwork through, one from Flex and one from Trickstar, being like, "Here, plug this on your socials." And I was like, "Oh, man, I can't advertise them on two radio stations because then you just basically going, right, pick which one you want to listen to." So I spoke to Strictly Flavour. I was like, "Look, I'm really sorry. Bad diary management on my part." But they aired the mix anyway. I said, like, I'll plug the one because I'm actually going down Flex in person, and then I'll plug the shit out of your playback in the coming days. So watch my social media for that, because I'm going to be plugging all sorts of radio stuff over the next few days. But it's all good.
So did you do? Was it exactly the same mix on both stations?
No. So I didn't mix at all down at Flex, because they use Rekordbox down there, and I've never used Rekordbox in my life. Maybe I could go down there, and DJ software is fairly standard, right? But like I'm. You know me, like I'm a perfectionist. I don't want to go down there and freestyle on a platform I've never used in my life, just for the fear of making myself look like even more of a twat than I actually am. You know what I mean? So I said to Impact, you know what? I'll bring some tunes with me. We'll just take them from the edge, chat about them. I've got plenty of new stuff that we can showcase. And actually, it worked out well, because he wanted to talk about some of my more bass-driven stuff, because I've obviously got the EP out with Downplay at the moment, which is quite bass-centric. I've got another one forthcoming, which has got some bass bits on Strictly House and Garage. So he wanted me to kind of go through those. And then obviously Strictly Flavour were keen for me to showcase some of the Strictly Flavour releases I've got, which are kind of more on my jazzy stepper tip. So actually, I ended up kind of somewhat unplanned and inadvertently showcasing two different sets of tracks. And added bonus was that if you were listening to radio today between 2 and 4, you couldn't get away from me because I was everywhere. So it worked out quite well.
Yeah, I love that Impact always clashes with me whenever I do radio every 2 weeks. Thanks for that, Impact. I'm sure he did that very intentionally.
He said to send his regards to you, by the way.
Yes, regards to you too, Mr. Lucas. I hope all is good. Great stuff. And I'm sure you plugged the shit out of the podcast while you was on there as well.
I did a fair bit of plug. I did so much plugging, I got told off for the amount of plugging I was doing, in fact.
Oh, mate, it's all about quid pro quo. Why do you think people go on these things? We was literally talking about this in the week with other people who will remain unnamed, but it's
This is true,
yeah, completely true. Good stuff. Well, yeah, I'm glad you've managed to get yourself about a bit. Big up to Strictly Flavour. Big up to Impact.
Absolutely.
So yeah, should we do our thing?
Get into
the top three showdown. You good to go first this week again, as per?
I'm good to go first. I just need to check my list because I forgot what I picked. Right, here we go. Fairly obvious selection for me. you know I'm a massive Higgo fan. I know you're a massive Higgo fan. He's got a new tune out last week. I think it came out with Poppy Baskcombe on the vocal on 21 NHG called Sleeping Alone. And it was a shoe-in for a play because it's just beautiful as ever. So let's get into it.
Tell me where you're going, baby. Are you thinking about you and me? You've been acting kinda shady. Is there somebody else you've seen lately? And all my girls are here in the club saying that I should know what I'm worth. And you guys are backing you up, keeping you safe and telling me lies. And you know what you do, telling me things that you know just ain't true. That you know just ain't true. Told you one time and I'm blocking your phone. 2 times and I'm letting you go. 3 times you'll be sleeping alone, yeah, sleeping alone. 1 time and I'm blocking your phone. 2 times and I'm letting you go. 3, 2, 1. Girls, and then thinking about guys, and then somebody else. And then me, oh baby. Guys, and then thinking about girls, and then somebody else. And then me.
Absolutely sick. Absolutely sick.
What can you say? Just flawless as ever, isn't it? You expect no less. Do you know what? I was really excited because I saw, I think it would have been last week actually, around about the time this track came out, he tweeted, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, he tweeted something to the effect of, sacked off the day job, now I can concentrate full time on music. And that excited me massively because I was like, yes, does that mean there's going to be an up in his work rate? Because if I had one complaint about it, it's I want to hear more tunes from him. So bring it on, Higgo. Let's go. All like this.
I mean, I did want to pick this one as well myself. It was one of my favourite tunes that's come out over the past couple of weeks. And the only reason I didn't is because I picked a Higgo tune previously, and I wanted to make sure I stayed diverse and not show loads of favouritism, just because there's so much that comes out every week in Garage. I'm so happy you picked it.
Sure.
Poppy Baskcombe, no idea who she is. I was trying to find her on Twitter, and she's got like a private Twitter account. It's obviously some vocalist that he's sourced from somewhere, and it's a wicked vocal.
She's delivered, isn't she? Like, and it fits really well with this vibe. That intro with like those keys, like that's right on my street. Like, it's just a kind of beautiful musicality that kind of slowly lulls into those pads, and then you've kind of got those almost disclosure-y kind of synth stabs that come in, and then you know what's coming, but nonetheless it doesn't disappoint. It's just flawless.
Great
work.
work.
I feel like I'm gushing too much here, like I'm fanboying, completely fanboying.
It's completely deserved. He's one of the best at the moment.
Sure.
One of the best in terms of for my taste, I guess for your taste. It's not everyone's taste, right? But right now in Garage, he's top of the game. And you know what? I'm happy that he done an extended mix of this one that I could get my hands on.
I thought that when I was looking the other day, I was like, oh yeah, Greg will be pleased. There is an extended mix, extended at 3.5 minutes. Still,
that was it. I played it on radio, and someone said in the chat room, "There's like trust Higgo to put out an extended mix that isn't even 4 minutes long." That's exactly what, and I was like, yeah, I was thankful for it. I was happy it went past 3. I was like, oh my god, this is like. It's like a marathon for a Higgo tune.
He must have heard you moaning on the other podcast. That must have been what it was. He's just like, oh, those grumpy gits have been whinging about the length of my tracks. I'll up it by a minute.
Yeah, no one listens to us. I thought we just did this so we could moan at each other just every couple of weeks.
It's like therapeutic.
Yeah, exactly. That's completely it. Great work.
With Higgo, like, I was thinking about this earlier because actually, like when I was on Impact show, like he asked me to take along a few old tracks. I don't know whether he was expecting me to pick out like old gems from like '98 or something, but you know that's not how I roll. Nothing against those tracks, but I'm like, I've heard them too many times. So I did in typical Phonetix fashion. I picked out a couple from the lost years. One of them's by Qualified, the other was by Artifact. It was only when we were kind of listening back to it, I was like, do you know what? Like if I made a direct comparison between what's going on in Garage now and those kind of bumpy 4/4 sounds, I feel like Higgo's like the closest thing to that era. Like he's almost like there is shades of Artifact in Higgo. I don't know if that's fair to say. Do you know what I mean? Like there are just elements of what he does that kind of remind me of that in his own kind of way. And that's not I'm not like saying, oh, he's ripped off Artifact or anything, but like maybe that's something to do with why I like him so much. Maybe he's got like for me and you, we're from that era. Maybe he's got like a nostalgic throwback vibe to back then. Possibly.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say that's what does it for me. I get why you're saying it. When you compare, like, I mean, I never really appreciated how musically brilliant Artifact was, and maybe that's because I had less of an understanding back then. But I can understand why you'd make a comparison. But then if I put the two side by side, I wouldn't. You could tell that they're a decade apart or whatever that they are.
They've definitely got their own. They've definitely got their sounds respectively, haven't they? You know, Higgo, you can pick out one of his tracks from a mile off for sure. Please, that one had no.
It's the same. It's the approach, right? It's the musical approach to putting the track down. He's got it there. I get where you're coming from that angle for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I'm keen to hear more, and I'm excited. I'm very excited at this prospect of a boatload more Higgo tracks.
This geezer ain't stopping. You know he ain't stopping. He's all over it. He's all over it. Right, so I'll jump into my first track. So I mean, I haven't gone for the kind of the standout tracks that everyone would have probably heard across every show over the past couple of weeks, but I picked out a little number that's come over from the States. This guy on the buttons of it is called P-Lask. I think I don't know if you pronounce it P-Lask or Plask. But he's got a tune here that I kind of picked up on, played it on my show. I think it's on my last show, and I really enjoy it. It's entitled "Never Get Away." It's not my usual kind of crazy drop in your face, massive bass explosion. Oh my God, my face is on the floor. What is this kind of jobby? Where I really placed this, this wouldn't have been out of place for me back in like kind of 2010, 2011 time when Future Garage was really kind of blowing up. It's got that kind of more downbeat sound to it, and because it's in America, they're not reusing all of the same sounds that have been used in garage for however many years. And, you know, we can talk about recycling sounds over and over again, I'm pretty sure. But it's like, you can tell that it doesn't sound exactly the same, but it sits in the same kind of palette. And I really enjoyed it. It was just a nice chill tune. It's not, it's not technically the most amazing, but it sits in a place that I enjoy.
I think that's a brilliant synopsis there. Like you kind of took the words out of my mouth in terms of the kind of vibe of it and where it fits. I love the arrangement of it and the way it builds. I love, like it kind of, you have those chords. There's a lot of thoughts going into the chords, and they lead you onto the next bit. And then as you get into the next bit, another sound comes in. And like you said, it doesn't have that big build-up drop I would expect from the usual selections. But it's not that kind of track. It doesn't need that. Do you know what I mean? It just kind of flows from one bit to the next, doesn't it? And it's just a beautiful listen. In fact, I must admit, I missed your last show. Apologies for that. So I hadn't actually heard this until you mentioned it to me earlier today. And the second I listened to it, I was like, that's going on my jazz step playlist. It's quite a song, you know what I mean? I went straight on Spotify, added it to my jazz step playlist, and I tagged him in a tweet, just being like, I've just added this to my playlist because it's a lovely vibe. And as far as, I mean, I don't know what I'd do if I heard it in a club, but then a lot of my selections and a lot of the music I listen to these days isn't necessarily dance floor oriented. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it's a dance track.
I'm quite happy to pull out something like that, have it on in the car, or have it on when I'm sitting on the sofa, and it's just nice, just a nice laid back vibe. It just makes me feel good, and I think a lot has gone into the sound design and that with those little synth patches and stuff. It's just very sort of intricately programmed and well done. I will definitely be on the lookout for more from P-Lask, whatever the hell his name is. I will have my eyes peeled.
It's nice. It's when you get someone from another country taking a take on UK garage and they've got that slightly different spin. You always get nice things out of it, and it can normally go a couple of different ways. Sometimes it goes really cliche because they're just trying to emulate every two-step shit that come out since '98, or it from America at least, it will go kind of more towards their poppy sound where everything's sung in triplets and they're using 808 on the drop for some reason over the top just to sound like a pop hit. And this doesn't do that. It's more, I say, it's their own kind of take, but I say it's got that future garage vibe for me. Like if this come out on L2S back in 2010, it wouldn't be out of place for me at all. Like it's a real, it's got,
I hadn't thought that until you said it, but like Whistler would have been all over that, wouldn't he? You're absolutely right. Yeah,
completely. All the sounds in the background, the way, all the structure of it is completely like his bag. If he doesn't mind me speaking for him, big up, boss man. But that's my share. That's me. For my first play. Good
Thank
stuff.
you. I very much enjoyed that.
No worries. Should we step into your second?
I was going to say, from one soulful laid-back tune to another. I'm not going to say too much about this. Safe to say, I'm going to give you 20 seconds to guess where it's from, and I don't think you're even going to need that. This is by an artist called Sam, and it's called Drama. It's available now on Per Life.
等間隔に並ぶネオン、俺の足元すり抜けたメロン、合わせられない歩幅もメモ、まだ積んでるエゴとエゴのレゴ、矛盾しないと矛盾する、世の中で嘘をつく、孤独に寄り添うミスター文字、俺を置いて一人踊る文字、重ねたトークライカジェンガ、吹いたよ風頬撫でるチェイサー、今宵一夜限りのドラマ、I'm so fly 裏返しのアンサー、ずれるコイン響く自販機、Keep on walk 君は自由に、理由なんて後付けの0時、100メーター先にコインパーキング。
So you said you was going to clash me on the Japanese vibes over text, and you said you was unjappable. I'm sure that's not a racist slur. Yeah, mate. Yeah. Oh, wipe the floor with me. What a rhythm.
I knew you'd be all over that, man. I mean, like I've been on a bit of a voyage of discovery over the past month. I know, like obviously last month we talked at length about Shunji Fuji's elegy, about luminance rather, and we were both raving about that. And I kind of went off and I was looking at some of the playlists because, like, obviously how one of the things that struck me last month was that a lot of the Japanese guys were adding tracks from my jazz step album to their playlist. So I'm like, right, they're obviously on the same wavelength. There's going to be some cool stuff on there. I started going through these playlists and that was like a brand new one that popped up, but there was an absolute raft of stuff that I have discovered over the past month, and I'm so excited to. I feel like a kid in a toy shop, or do you know what I mean? Like I just found all this new music, and that was one of the picks. But that was, I mean, on my list, on my short list, that was one of several tracks from the Far East which fit this part of the show perfectly. Yeah, I'm going on there. I mean, it's a nice vibe. Like the keys, it's laid back, and it's a testament as well to what we said before about actually the vocal content and actually not being overly fussed about the language. Because I need to brush up on my Japanese. I haven't got a clue what he's saying, but I love that track nonetheless. Do you know what I mean?
Mate, stunning. I loved it. Absolutely loved it from start to finish. Piano. The piano instantly made me think of Paleface. What's
Yeah,
that?
I
What
can
is
see
that
that.
tune? I can't remember what it's called. I forgot. I could just hear the piano and I can see the record label. And I can't.
I know the tune you mean. I can't
Yeah.
name it either, but I know exactly. Now you've said that, I know exactly what you mean.
That's
yeah,
it. It sounded like that piano, but done better. Is the only way I can put it. And when the drop came in, I wasn't expecting it to be as smooth a two-step as that, but it was phenomenal. MC's flow, wicked. No idea what he's chatting about. He could be talking about genocide. It doesn't matter. It sounds amazing. Great stuff. Great find, man. What a tune.
Can I give, like, whilst we're talking about Japanese garage, J-garage, whatever you want to call it, I would recommend, if you're feeling that, check out a guy called Taka Ryu, as spelt as you would expect it to be. I mentioned to you, didn't I, recently about the Megatrax Speed Gar compilations. So don't be perturbed by the fact they're called Speed Gar, because it isn't speed garage in the traditional sense of, it isn't like loads of warpers from '98. But there's a big label in Japan that they don't only put out J garage, they put out all sorts of high octane EDM. One of the things they do really well is they do this super advanced futuristic two-step. Well, it's not only two-step, it's basically garage, but it's a bit faster, and it's got a lot of sort of Wave Racer style synths over the top of it, so those kind of techie sounds that you would expect to hear in a Capcom computer game from the 90s, you know what I mean? But some of it, if you can get your head around the tempos, I mean, I said to you, didn't I, via text, like some of it's 145, 150. I've actually been making some, and I thoroughly enjoy doing it. So I'm in contact with a couple of the Japanese labels at the minute. But Megatrax, Speedgar. Do you know what? I might even add some of them to the to our In the Garage playlist, just for sort of ease of reference for listeners, because they're well worth a listen. If you can appreciate high quality, production levels, the quality control is there. It's just a case of getting your head around the tempo of some of it. Thankfully, that selection was obviously more in line with the tempo of what we would traditionally expect from a two-step track. Hence, it kind of fit a little bit better. But there's plenty of just awesome stuff out there. I'm going to shut up because I'm gushing again. I'm just doing a whole lot of fanboying tonight. Need to calm down.
Mate, that's what it's here for. That's what they pay to see, mate. It's the gushing and the fanboying. I'm jumping into the same country. I'm gonna have to skip past the intro a little bit because I know it's a long old intro on this one. But again, one I played on my recent show. It dropped on Trekkie Tracks, which is the label. I don't know if Car Painter owns it. They must own it because it's Trekkie Tracks, Car Painter, right? So they put this tune out a couple of weeks ago, and it's by an artist called Isagen, and this one is called Schmile. Have a listen. I've definitely been out japped. Let's see how this one goes. Big up. I mean, like, there's just music in the percussion even. It just dances, right? I love the use of a proper guitar in there, a proper guitar sample. It's a happy sound. You got the spooky old
theremin.
What are they called? Yeah, the theremin in there.
I think he deserves props for being possibly.
This is Phonetix, and if you're watching the podcast on YouTube right now, you're going to be wondering why we've opted for some old kung fu film style dubbing. You may have noticed that this month the podcast was a tad later than usual. The reason for that was due to a couple of technical issues. First of which was you can see me holding my beautiful condenser mic there in the video. It actually didn't record properly, which we didn't realise until we finished the episode. Bit of a bummer, but the more pressing issue we had was actually with Twitch, because the way we formulate the podcast is it streams out to a Twitch channel, which we can then download the output from and edit. Unfortunately, in selecting the next track, which ironically is one of my own tracks, we were hit with a DCMA copyright strike. albeit for a track that I wrote. And Twitch kindly, being the wankers that they are, muted the audio. And shouts out to Andy at Slime for being a gent and trying to help us resolve the issue. Unfortunately, although he went to his distributor and asked for the copyright strike to be removed, Twitch actually denied the appeal. So the moral of the story is this: Twitch wankers, and we've ended up with a glaring 5-minute gap on our podcast where there was me casually doing a humble brag and promoting my new release. So I'm instead going to just chat shit for 5 minutes, and I hope you don't mind too much until the mute comes off, in which case we will go back to the original audio with both myself and BrainZ. So if you look at the video right now, you can see me kind of subtly trying to big myself up without sounding like too much of a twat. BrainZ, bless him, being the lovely guy he is and a good mate of mine, was kind of singing my praises. And, you know, I sort of said, you know, we'd discussed prior to the recording that the podcast really wouldn't be validated until such a time as we managed to discuss one of the Slime releases. And as luck would have it, I obviously do have my 2002 EP available widely now. Check out phonetix.co.uk for more information on where you can get that. Round about now, I mean, God knows why Twitch even muted the audio where they did, because actually they cut off the end of the discussion we were having about the last track, which is a shame because it was a big one. But right about now, I'm about to drop in the audio from a track taken from the EP, which is actually riding quite high in the Beatport and Juno download charts at the moment, titled Get On Down. It was a break step inspired number which took a lot of influence from DJ Zink's Bingo Beats releases back in the day, and that kind of was the first track I recorded from the EP. And I think at this point in the video I'm kind of sort of saying to BrainZ I was surprised that of all the tracks on the EP it was the one I expected to get the most support for from DJs. Somewhat surprisingly, the one that ended up getting a lot of plays was The Payoff, which was the Orish J inspired two-stepper, a kind of dark bassline-led thing. And BrainZ commented actually that was his choice of the bunch. BrainZ commented actually that being the music snob he is, he observed in terms of the promo, he's obviously on Slime's promo list and got the promo mail out for the whole EP in advance. What I actually do when I'm doing a mail out to my little inner circle, if I've got an EP coming out, I'll break it down into each track and I'll drip feed them a track from the EP each week. My thinking always being that if you send people 4 tracks in one hit, no DJ's got space on their show with the plethora of new music coming out that they can play 4 of your tracks. but you're fairly assured that they're going to play one of the tracks. BrainZ obviously picked up on that, realised he was obviously one of the very few that had this particular track, Get On Down. So he actually showcased that first and then later went back and played the other ones in succession, being the gent that he is.
One don't get played and then it all gets forgotten. Bright, very bright.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you put 3 or 4 tracks, I mean, we talked about it before, didn't we? You put 3 or 4 tracks out at a time. Like, most DJs aren't going to play 3 or 4 tracks on their show. So if you send them one at a time, you get more of a rounded exposure for the EP, don't you? And it's interesting because in terms of the tracks from that EP that got played, so it's a 4-track EP. You've got that one. You've got like the Oris J kind of sounding one that's called The Payoff. You've got the 4/4 roller that's Lighting Fires, and then a 2-step track called Goodbye. And I just incorrectly assumed that this one, Get On Down, was going to be the one that got hammered. But actually, like, from what I've seen and from the live streams and the sets that I've been tagged in, The Payoff is the one that the DJs have been repping the most, which of all the tracks was probably the one I thought was least likely to get support because it sounds so distinctly of its time. But perhaps there's a bigger gap in the market there for that kind of Oris J sound than there is for the zinc thing, because there are still people obviously doing the breakbeat thing, as we've discussed before, haven't we? You know, like the Spanish lot are quite on the breakbeat thing, so maybe that's part of it. But I didn't know how it was going to go when the EP got released, and it's interesting to see in terms of sales. Get On Down is obviously the one that's charting highest. Although the DJs that have been tagging me have been repping The Payoff the most, that one there is the one that the record buy and public are latching onto, and I guess that's the most important thing, right? Is what the consumer wants. People are feeling it, so
yeah, it's a real strange one. I mean, I played this first of all. I think the main reason I played this tune, I'll be completely honest with you, is because obviously you didn't send out this one straight away. You only sent out the Payoff, and Andy obviously sends me it all. So I'm like, right, I'm playing one that no one else is playing. That was straight up, right, well, who ain't got this? Right, I'm playing that. Just to be that arsehole, hold my hands up to it. But I think I agree. I probably prefer The Payoff to that track. And I think it's more just because The Payoff is more, it sounds more up to date. You may have been trying to emulate that Oris J kind of sound, but it still sounds more modern. And I think, even though, I mean, you haven't really talked about the fact that what you call this is the 2002 EP, right? So it was all the tracks are aimed to be of around that kind of time. Great concept, and you've put a modern spin on all of them, I'd say, but still made a great EP that does sound of that kind of time. But yeah, I think The Payoff just sounds the most mature, and that's probably why it's getting the most traction. That's from my perspective.
That's interesting. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback, man. No, I mean, 2002 was a sort of, it's got a place in my heart because that was the year where I turned 18 and kind of started going properly clubbing, and so that's why I kind of wanted to do something that harked back to that, because I just remember the kind of bubbling melting pot that was UK garage at that time, and the umbrella with all the little micro niches, and remember there being the people that were really into that Oris J kind of sound, and I must admit I wasn't one of them at the time. I didn't really get it. I couldn't really get on with Dark One, Spider, and tracks like that. I was just a bit like, yeah, I'm not really sure. But then upon reflection in later years, kind of went back and was just like, there's something to those tracks. And they were kind of, arguably, you could argue the roots of dubstep, right? Tracks like that from that era. Because what started as that kind of went on to be that kind of evolved sound that people like, you know, championed to kind of kickstart that movement. But yeah, there was that kind of that bass heavy 2-step. There was the 4/4 rollers. There was the break step, and just a beautiful time in garage to just be able to go out and hear all of those kind of different vibes within the same set. I feel like a lot of DJs these days, and funny enough, I was talking about this with Impact earlier. There's a lot of DJs around that are kind of like, I play this specific micro genre, this specific style of garage, and they don't kind of deviate from that. And I'm not criticizing them, because it's like you kind of get that purist following by doing that, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that always attracted me to garage, and I think the thing that probably attracted a lot of people to garage, was that variety. So, you know, that era in garage where it was really varied, and where EZ rocked up and you knew he was going to play a little bit of this and a little bit of that and just churn through them all in the space of an hour and a half, and it was just going to light the club on fire. That's all sort of fond memories and nostalgic for me, and that was the.
But I mean, that's been there in this history forever, right? It used to be house and garage, H&G. That's what it was. They used to get mixed in. You'd have a bit of house, a bit of garage, and there was always that kind of crossover. And I think it's always had that kind of floating genre that's never been one thing. And you do get these kind of subtypes of tunes that come out over the times.
But
that's what I love about it.
But would you agree that there are sort of certain times in garage where I don't want to say that gets lost, but there are certain times where it's more marked, it's more that's more apparent than other times? Because I know, like, if you look back to I know we always harp on about the forgotten years, but like look at the lost era, look at 2003 through 2008, right? Yeah, there were kind of different brackets of garage, and you had that kind of bumpy 4/4 in London. You had people championing two-step, you had the baseline thing going on up north. But in general terms, and I'm just going to use something like 4x4 or Prolific as an example, you wouldn't expect necessarily to go to one of those club nights in that time and hear that varied selection of tracks as you maybe did in yesteryear. Do you know what I mean? And I think, I don't go out. I mean, no one goes out clubbing today at the moment. I haven't been to a garage night in a long while, but certainly from the live streams that I've tuned into, and certainly from the radio shows that I listen to, in general terms, there are DJs around that mix it up. You're one of them. Merlin mixes it up a lot. Impact does it quite a lot. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I'm not just saying that because you guys are my boys. You are my boys, but like that's a fact. You guys do mix it up. There are a lot of DJs that I lock into that don't seem to mix it up so well, and that's not a criticism of them. That's just their personal taste. Just my observation is over the years, it's kind of become less of a thing that the DJs are kind of mixing up from the full spectrum of garage. People seem to kind of own in on kind of a particular sound. Just as I say, not a criticism, just an observation, man.
It's whatever you feel like you enjoy and what's marketable, I guess. I don't know. Everyone's got their own thing. I don't think I'd judge anyone on. I say the only time I would judge is if you're blatantly trying to emulate someone else or you're completely pandering. That's the only thing that I'll probably judge you for. But otherwise, just play what you enjoy, man. If you enjoy 4/4 bass warpers and nothing else, and you just want to make your ears bleed, have at it, mate. Like, play it. Like, I'm not going to stop you. Everyone likes a little bit of ear blood every now and again, and I play my set of warping tunes when I can. We didn't talk really at all about. There's, you know what? It's almost like they need their own kind of section on this podcast, Slime Recordings, and the amount of dedication that Mr. Andy Basic has had over the years. Of just dedication of constantly putting out releases on Slime. You've got Boss Mode as a sister label. Downplay is obviously the garage kind of standout one at the moment. And there's just so much we could go on about what he's done over the years. And I just wanted to say thank you to him for his dedication and the repertoire he's given us over the years.
I'm glad you took a minute to do that. I was pondering, and maybe it's something we discuss for down the line, doing like a Slime special or something. I think there are a handful of labels around that really deserve the props of perhaps doing some kind of special episode or something. But Slime is definitely one of them. The level of quality control has always been so high. Like you know what you're getting, and you know it's going to be good when Andy gets behind something. And obviously that was a big part of why I wanted to get involved. I would say it's been an absolute pleasure to work with him. So big up Andy, he's a true pro. I'm looking forward to doing some more work with them.
If you can get onto his release schedule, it's so packed. I imagine if you're at the back of the queue at the moment, you're releasing in like 2030. Big up each and every. All right, let's get out of the world of phonetics and see what my last one is. Me. Right, so yeah, I'm just gonna play this tune. Let's just get it on. It's D-Tune's latest one, and I love it. I'm gonna just kick it off, and we're gonna listen to it and enjoy it. Big up. Those harmonies, man. Those harmonies are just doing things to me. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. It's got early Prolific vibes all over it. We use Prolific. We talk about it so much, obviously because they were a huge label in the revival of the Forgotten Years. But back early when we got the Guy Simone, Your Mind, is obviously the tune that instantly comes to mind when I hear this tune. I think just because of the sounds of the bass, the two-step in and the harmonies, it's got that. It would have fit perfectly on that label back then. So this is D tune with travizWILDE is the vocalist on it, and it's called Groove. And you know, I'm doing a Roberto gush here a little bit over it. I'm sure you've got plenty to say about it, but it's just musically and vocally, it's just beautiful. And well done, lads. Wicked tune.
Agree with everything you said there, man. Like I've obviously I've followed D-Tune for a while. He's been a big supporter of mine over the years. I've been a big supporter of his. I did a remix for him actually a few years back. I would say, Chris, this is by far and away the best thing you've ever done. I think it's a real standout for me. If I look at his discography, like, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. You said everything I would say, BrainZ, and I think actually your suggestion that it would have been well suited to Prolific, spot on. The comparison to MJ Collins by Simone track, spot on. Yeah, it's great. And big up Travis as well. Like you said, that vocal is just smooth, absolutely smooth.
I wonder if he arranged all that harmony himself. I'd love to know who arranged the harmonies, because it's really well done. Really well done.
It's very slick. The whole thing's it's just very slick. I very much enjoyed it. It's another one where the second I heard it, I went straight on and added it onto my jazz step playlist. I was like, yeah, perfect fit.
Cracker, D-Tune, great work. And that also means that I haven't got any random savage, sneaky Spanish bass cut to put in for my third placer this week, which is interesting.
I don't know whether to be relieved or disappointed, man. I like your little out there. You know, if ever there was a week for you to surprise me with a fourth selection like I did to you a couple of months back, maybe it'd be now. But
well, we're going to try the new thing, right? So every show we add the tunes that we discuss into Rob's carefully curated Spotify playlist, the In the Garage Recommends playlist on Spotify. If you haven't grabbed that yet, that is you can get that over it's intheukgarage.com/recommends. We'll get you straight onto Spotify to subscribe to that bad boy. Now, along with the tunes that we play, we also add more of our kind of favourite tunes of the moment. So we've got a bunch of tunes that we're going to add to the playlist this time round. We normally add them up to be 10 in total, is that right, between us each? So
10 each, yeah.
So that means we've got another 7 to talk. To keep it nice and swift, I've challenged Rob. We're going to say one sentence about each tune. So just say artist, title, and then one sentence about it. Do you want to just fire through all of yours and then I'll do all of mine, or do you want to go back to back?
Yeah.
How should we do it? Let's go back to back. We do one each, right? You do one, right. I'll do one. That might work, right? This could be interesting.
First one on my list is Cortez featuring Movement, Things That Make You Go which is out now on Shall Not Fade. Shall Not Fade, great label, and this track is gritty. If I could sum it up in one word, gritty. It's the perfect summary of the type of thing that Shall Not Fade put out.
Awesome. My first choice is the remix of Bert Cope's Broken by Yemi. And it is just a nice, polite take on Bert Cope's bass savageness.
That's a lovely one, by the way. The next one, I'm not entirely sure how you say her name. I think it's Viva Rola. She's a Japanese R&B vocalist. Another one of my Japanese selections. She's got a track out called Mixed Feelings, which is available on Hitplan Music. Lovely, just another lovely, smooth two-stepper with a nice warm bass on it.
My next one's Carrie Baxter on the vocals, and it's the 4/4 Love Affair Black Habit remix. Black Habit can do nothing but shit gold.
That's your one sentence?
That's my one sentence, done.
That's a great summary right there. Next, I've got Skepsis and TS7, Freak, the Flavor D remix specifically, which is out on Crewcast. it's rammed full of energy. It's almost like a sort of modern take on speed garage. Bass heavy thing, and the bass just gets right in your head.
Nice. My next selection, we've got Hans Glader and Georgie with a track called Mad For You. Hans Glader backed up by an MC, bringing some brutally nice beats.
My only complaint about that track is the brass doesn't come in a little bit sooner, but when it does, it just takes my breath away. Next on my list, I've got Smasher featuring Local, Them Days, which is available now on Top Records. It's Smasher, that's what it says on the tin. Lovely soulful vibe, chill out stuff. Just easy listening.
Big up MC Local, best Welshman 2020. Large up your chest. My next choice, okay, I can't pronounce this one because he's missing all the vowels out of his name for some reason. It's Rivnti. And the track is called Something Tells Me. It's hard to describe this one. You need to listen to it. It's garage, but it ain't, and it's nice.
Sorry, just going to pause for a moment there, because I always wonder, like, when you get an artist with a name like that, when they go on a radio show and do a radio spot, or if someone asks them what their socials are, how the fuck do you go about plugging that? Because you can't be like, oh yeah, check me out at like. Yeah, it's bad enough with a name like Phonetix, where the spelling's a bit all over the place.
They'll just sound like they're having a stroke when they've got no vowels. It sounds like they're having a stroke.
Next on my list, I've got "Spend the Night," which is one of the tracks off the new MPH Night Bass EP. It's just a splendid blend of what sounds like a kind of throwback to the old school 4/4 track, but with lashings of typical MPH high energy drums and bass.
Awesome. My next choice, straight out of Spain, Murex Echoes, Spanish breaky garage, and it's pretty nice. Check it out.
I've heard that one, yeah. I'm going to have to go check it. Last on my list, I've got another one from Shunji Fuji, who we showcased last month. It's his new release, which is called Elegy, and it's available now on Infinity Sense. Just another lovely, smooth vocal two-stepper. He's Japanese, but the vocal's in English. So is the MC. Not that we care about language here on in the Garage podcast, but interesting to see a sort of a Japanese artist come with a fully English track tailored towards the London scene.
Wicked. My last choice is off my favourite Spanish label, 83 Records, and it's a remix of Yo Speed's Stay With Me, label boss man Gao on the remix. Again, Gao always bringing high quality vibes, and this is his breaky side rather than his bassy side. Please check it out.
It's another nice one, man.
That's it. That was nice. That was a good little challenge. And it also challenged me to actually remember what each one sounded like. I feel like I need to make sure I listen to them again before we come on so that I'm just not making it up. Good fun. I liked it. Should we step back? Let's do it. Let's time travel. Let's get in the TARDIS.
Onto the time travel. Indeed. I'm going first, I assume?
Always.
So I gave you a heads up, didn't I, before we got on here, that I was going to finally pay tribute to my man Brad. So big up ODM. One Dark Martian's been doing his thing for time, still doing it now. I apologise, Brad, that we're not picking one of your new tracks to rep. We will get to that, I'm sure, in the coming months because he's churning them out at the minute. But this track right here, real sentimental track for me. I would probably go as far to say, and I've said this to Brad, were it not for this track, I don't think I would still be making garage. I remember hearing this track and I was just so mesmerised by it, by the sound palette, by the arrangement, by the kind of haunting vocal, and the overall texture of the track. I fell in love with it. It inspired me, it blew me away, it really got me onto making loads of bumpy 4/4, and I'm going to hush up before I just chat the whole way through it. This is ODM featuring Mary Turner, It Doesn't Have to Be, which was available via True Tiger Recordings circa 2005.
I remember ODM being originally categorised as like a Todd Edwards sound-alike, and this track I think shows really that weren't him at all.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely, you can hear the inspiration of both Todd and Daft Punk, right? And I think he would admit that they're two of his key influences, but he does it differently. There's obviously a lot of artists around that do sound very like Todd, right? That's not a criticism, it's just a fact. It's one of those things. Todd's the godfather of garage, right? So it's bound to be the case. But ODM has just got such a distinctive, unique take on it, and I think, you could drop this track today and it would still sound as fresh as it did back then. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't his first release. I think he had a few releases before this, but I remember hearing that and it just captured me in a way that I don't think I'd ever been captured before. Like, I just was obsessed with that track, and I think it's a testament that it'll be like 16 years later and I can still listen to it. I've still got goosebumps now. It doesn't, you play a track for 16 years to someone and usually it pisses them off by the end of that. I still love it now.
I don't think you're the first artist that I've heard say that track was responsible for them hanging around in garage. And it was probably just because it was around that time where, the forgotten years were kind of building and then starting to become a bit samey and nothing was getting too exciting. And maybe this was that one when it dropped on True Tiger where it's like, oh, there's still cool things happening. I don't know, but you're definitely not the first person. It might have been The Future that said it as well. I don't want to put words in Steve's mouth, but I feel like it was him as well that said, it was definitely someone else, another producer that said,
big up The Future. He's a solid producer in his own right. I lost my train of thought there. Well, I was going to say,
and I'll keep waffling for a little bit then while you can think. I said before when you picked an ODM track, there was only two tracks that I would think that you could pick, right? This was one of them, obviously, and the other one was Always Be There, which I think was probably
Always Be There.
That was like his first kind of big hit, I think. Like he had the 4-tracker EP before that was a bit more obscure, and then Always Be There come out on True Tiger with a full colour sleeve, and that was the one that kind of established him, I think, to say, right, ODM means business now. But then this one was kind of I understand why you picked this. It's his peak, definitely.
He did a follow up to this track with Mary Turner on the vocal, didn't he? The Reason was that Stereotype release, I think I've got in my head.
It might have been the B-side to this, mate. I don't know.
Was it the B-side? Because this came out. I remember this was around for ages before it got released. Do you remember it? It was a 4-track. Yeah, I think you're right. You might be right. Actually, it was a 4-tracker, and it was Will Phillips on one side, ODM on the other.
Yeah.
And the Will Phillips tracks were also two of my all-time Percy's as well. There was In Love with You, and I can't name the other track, but yeah, the other one, yeah. But the EP as a whole was just pristine. He also did another one. He did, which I think came out on Streets, was Who Are You? Do you remember that one? That was a wicked kind of vibe. It was just a bit more vocoder in there. It was kind of vocal that it kind of bounced. You'd know if I played it to you.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
probably. Don't come to mind right now.
I remember taking some flack on the forums back around those times as well from a certain producer who I won't name. But I remember someone giving him a lot of shit and going, this isn't garage. Basically, I don't know what it is, but it kind of, in essence, saying it doesn't belong here. But actually, I kind of disagreed. I always felt the fact that it was very different, the fact that it borrowed elements of Daft Punk and he brought in those kind of 80s synths and he was doing kind of different things, for me was very much the epitome of garage. Going back to what we were saying a short while ago about how it was always about diversity, wasn't it? And about creating new textures and different things. And actually, maybe you were right in your analysis there where you said, like, he came along and he did something really different. Obviously, I champion the Forgotten Years in its entirety all the way through, because there was loads of absolutely banging stuff. But in terms of creativity and something really different, perhaps it needed someone like Brad to come along and do a really different take on it. And I don't really know if I look back on it now, if I go, right, okay, let's look at the history of garage. Has there ever been anybody that's come along and really stuck their middle finger up and done anything that different since? Do you know what I mean? Like, Disclosure have definitely got their own distinctive take on it, and they've kind of inspired a lot of people along the way. But you could potentially argue that Brad was like an early kind of incarnation of, I don't know whether Disclosure would say that they were directly influenced by ODM. They were probably too young to have heard of him, I would imagine. But he was there doing his own thing, and he's still there now. I said it on one of the earlier podcasts. I've got so much respect for the guy because a lot of people jump ship, as will happen within genres, and there's been some real dark times over the years as garage has gone up and down. And I know obviously stereo hype and streets were a big outlet for ODM, and I think when Charmer kind of moved on, Brad was like me, one of those people who kind of went, I don't know what I'm going to do now, but nonetheless he always just kept churning out tunes. He's just always been there. He's a real stalwart, like a mainstay of garage. And I don't think, obviously he's got his loyal fan base. There are people who champion ODM, right? But it's not as big as he deserves it to be. Like for the legwork that he's put in, for the amount of tunes and releases he's done. I'm glad to see Russ has picked him up for Point Blank, and he's regularly putting stuff out on Point Blank because it's a well-established and respected label. Maybe that kind of ups his rep a little further. But I feel like he's one of those artists from the forgotten years that probably has I don't want to say gotten lost or just basically hasn't ever received the credit that he deserves. I hope something happens to change that. But props to him for sort of carrying on going. Nonetheless,
I'm frantically trying to find the release on Discogs while you're talking, and it's crashing my browser as I'm going in. But I've got a feeling that the reason might have been the B side to this, because he never put out the vocal mix of It Doesn't Have to Be originally, did he?
I think you're right. I think you could only get it digitally, couldn't you? Because do you remember that Charmer set up the Stereo Hype site, and there was lots of additional mixes of tracks on there. And I think you're right. I think perhaps the release had, because that was the dub mix that we just played. Should just clarify that was the dub mix. And I think the mix of the Reason that went out was also the dub mix. I seem to recall Mary being a bit hacked off because obviously she did full vocals and she was just like, "Where's my vocal mixes?" Do you know what I mean? But like, I don't think it was any. I don't think anyone meant any disrespect to Mary. I think just that sound and that era and those tracks just kind of worked better a little bit dubby than they did as full vocal tracks. But yeah, I think you could get the vocal tracks purely on a digital basis, and no more, because I looked on Spotify. I must apologise to Brad because obviously we're not going to be able to add that to the In the Garage recommends playlist. But what I will do in place of it is go and pick out one of his new releases. He did a track recently, Signals, on his Point Blank EP, which was firing, which I loved. So I'll probably use that instead of that one there.
So what I've actually realised, this is completely by coincidence as well, is that I've also picked a True Tiger release.
Ah, okay.
Would you believe it?
I think I know what it is. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let you. I think I know it is. I think I know what it is.
I'm just looking back. So that EP was called Will One Take Over?
Yes. What a great name for an EP. The Lost Years. Even the EP names are great.
and it was right. So it doesn't have to be was the B1, and the Reason was B2, and then it was In Love with You and Ignoring Me by Will Phillips on the A side.
Ignoring Me, that was
and it was Stereo Hype versus True Tiger. I forgot all of this. It's probably sitting in the shelf over there somewhere. But yeah, I picked a True Tiger release as well. I'm not gonna lie. When this tune came out, I probably hated it. I probably hated it. That probably even gives it away a bit more what tune it is. And people were going mad for it, and I didn't understand it. And I think after a while of getting the vinyl and playing it a bit, it was a complete evolution of sound, and it wasn't kind of anything that you'd heard before really in garage. It was a bit different. So I'm gonna bring us into this one swiftly, also on True Tiger Recordings, and it's by Skandalous Unlimited, and this one is called Watford Weather. like 2 tunes in one, man. Like
Yeah, man.
completely different to anything you've heard. Like obviously you got the sample in there as well. Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone was kind of new for garage, and it was just a complete the dichotomy of the one tune going into the other. It was a weird old switch, and Gowers loves these marimbas for sure, and this tune he put together was absolutely fat. I learned to appreciate it after time. I heard it killed raves, as in people didn't understand it, and you drop this tune and the dance floor would stand there and be like, what the fuck is this? And it's underappreciated for its time. It was trying something different, but I definitely know I started threads on Uptown Forum. First one being, what is this shit? I hate this. And then the second one being, this is the greatest tune of all time. And being called out for the fact that I've said 2 different things about it. But yeah, that was my pick.
I think, do you know what? I think I probably agree with what you said there in terms of your. I had like a visceral reaction where I really wasn't sure about it. And it took some time for me to get my head around it. And then when I did come around to it, I was just like, that's bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, absolutely, I'm with you on that. Because it's that second part, that big build up and that drop. It's almost a little bit off key. It's almost I mean, obviously it's not random, but it's almost kind of random sounding. It kind of makes you go, like, what's going on here? But like, the more you listen to it, like the texture, that the track as a whole is just absolutely banging. And like you say, like, you hear those drums, those are Gower's drums from the get-go. They're just so fat, so beefy. Like, I don't know. I listen to the Signal to One stuff as well, right? Gower's as well. And like the way that's all put together, like I feel like he was almost ahead of his time in what he was doing in that era. Like the production level was so high, and I still can't quite wrap my head around. All these years later, like I consider myself a very proficient producer, I cannot get my head around how he got his drums to sound that fat and that energized, because I don't know what tempo. Have you got that playing on? Oh, you've got that on iTunes, haven't you? I was going to say, what have you got that playing on? I wonder what the tempo of that track is, because it's not like a 140 track, but it sounds as if it's playing at 140. It's just there's so much energy in that track.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's just, yeah. I
don't know what speed it is because it's probably a vinyl rip that I've got. But yeah, there is so much energy to it, and Gowers is the best producer you've never heard of. Like he was so underrated, and I think all of the nerds appreciated him, but not a lot of people knew about him, and somehow True Tiger had kind of got him under the wing to represent the kind of Skandalous Unlimited brand, and that kind of left him swept away doing that until the Signal to One stuff kind of come out. And I kind of just felt like there was this genius that was kind of just being underappreciated and left to crank out. Yeah. It was like shitty grime they was making him do pretty much. What was the name? Who was the guy? What was the MC that was the other half of Skandalous?
It was Stan. It wasn't an MC. It was Stanza. It was
yeah,
an MC,
I thought Stanza was an MC. Did he not? Did he not?
No, he was a DJ.
Okay.
I don't. He might have been an MC. I don't remember him MCing, but
Stanza was the other half, right?
A couple of occasions. Nice play.
I never got to meet either of them. It's just to say, I felt like that. When Gowers I remember Gowers used to have a tune in his signature on a forum, right? And it was just like, yeah, here's the latest thing I've knocked up, like so like blasé. And then you click on this link, and it's like, holy fuck, this guy is like making like top quality garage, and people be like, that tune in your signature's sick. It's like that's not even what the thread's about, and people are asking him what's going on with this kind of thing. It was just massive talent, and it's worth. I don't want it to be like a eulogy of him. I'm sure he's probably somewhere out in the industry, ghost producing for someone really really large, or he's got his own name that he's making himself. He was, he's probably Calvin Harris, man. And we didn't realise. I don't know. Like.
Do you know what I also liked about Gowers? I remember there being, Uptown as Uptown was. I remember there being these really pretentious threads started by producers who were kind of ridiculing other producers for using certain bits of software, and certain people that were using Reason got shit, and certain people that were using FL Studio got shit. And there was this whole, and it still goes on to this day, there's this very production's this kind of big boys club, isn't it? And it's like people get very condescending and very kind of holier than thou with it. And there's this culture of people who go, oh, if you aren't using Logic or Pro Tools, you aren't a real producer. And I remember there being threads to that effect on Uptown. And obviously there was a few garage producers that were quite vocal. Hey, yeah, no, I use FL Studio, I use Reason, like whatever they were using. And I've always been of the thinking that it doesn't fucking matter what you're using to make your tunes, it's the end results. It's exactly the same as it doesn't matter whether you were mixing on belt drives or direct drives. If you were doing good mixes, you were doing good mixes, right? And Gowers was the one who really proved that when he came along, and like he was using FL Studio for all of those, for that track, for all of those Signal to One tracks, mixing down the True Tiger stuff, doing it all within the box using FL. It was just like a massive middle finger, like a fuck you to anyone who ever said, oh, that's a cheap, that's a kid's toy. No, it's fucking, I listen to his music. That guy's a don. Like you said, like he was just years. Even, I know you said about the shitty grime tracks, even some of the kind of hybrid kind of grime tracks, I think they did, it was a Kylie Bond track with Purple on the vocal. And I've got a feeling it was called My Life or something in my head. And it was like this hybrid grime garage track. I don't know if you know the one I mean. It was around that time where True Tiger were championing that, I think what they called R&G. Do you remember that?
Right, yeah.
It was R&G as in rhythm and grime, and it was like a hybrid. But like obviously Gowers was quite heavily responsible for that, and that probably, you know, if I had to pick my sound, wouldn't be my cup of tea. But even that stuff was like fucking badass. But you know, he
took it and made it good, right? But it's exactly what you said. They've tried to create a brand to force a kind of pop thing through for grime, and it obviously it didn't work because we're not still talking about R&G now. And this is no disrespect to what those guys did, because, you know, let's say True Tiger, the whole repertoire of True Tigers, a lot of it's really good, and the two things we've picked today have coincidentally been both from True Tiger's record label. But yeah, I'm very typically just going to be blasé when I first, without thinking, to slag someone off, and I shouldn't be slagging off the contribution that they made in the forgotten years. But yeah, some of that stuff weren't my cup of tea, like you say, and it weren't yours. And it's like this is where it was for me. Watford Weather, the Signal to One bits, phenomenal, and there was other bits that they did. They're not jumping out to me right now, but there were other stuff that stood out.
I've got a little short list actually on my hard drive of tunes from the forgotten years that I will put forward as we go through episode after episode with this podcast. And yeah, I think there's multiple Signal to One tracks on there. Like the Tidra Moses remix springs to mind, but yeah, there was a few of them.
Jill Scott one, Love Rain.
Jill Scott one. Yeah. Love Rain Down on Me. Yeah, just yeah. I mean, we could. I'm fanboying again, man. What is it today? We're just gushing.
I love that you mentioned about MC Purple, right? And there's one tune that I've always wanted. There's an MC Purple diss track against Bashy. Have you ever heard that? I don't know if I have. I don't know who produced it, but it's only on vinyl, and I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard it somewhere. But Bashy's real name is Ashley Thomas, and the tune's called Ashley Thomas. And it's just it's hilarious. Like he cusses Bashley through the whole track, and I don't know whether Gowers produced it or not, because I think it's put out as just MC Purple Ashley Thomas. That's one for you guys to track down. If you can send me an MP3,
I'm gonna go and have a look on YouTube.
I need that tune in my life. Please feedback at intheukgarage.com if you can hook us up with that. We have been waffling for I don't know how long now. We are an hour and 10 in, so we better get on to have a little gas before we can get out of here. So, what is the first topic we wanted to talk about? Was it the youngers' favourite pastime?
What did we decide on the topics? I can't remember. We were going to talk about like drugs of choice.
The youngers' favourite pastime.
To scenes. Yeah, drugs are bad. Say no. No. Yeah, like it was. I was having an interesting conversation with someone I know, because they're from a sort of slightly different background to me in terms of clubbing and raving. Now, obviously, I identify. I turned 18 in 2002. I never really did the Mad Warehouse or In the Field raves. I've been to some drum and bass nights. I've been to a couple of hardcore nights, but like I was never fully into those kind of scenes in the same way I was garage. You know what I mean? I've always been kind of a garage head at heart. That's a bit of a paradox, isn't it, garage? You know what I mean? But we identified, like in the course of our conversation, obviously my friend, she is from that scene, like where her mates were massively into that kind of rave scene, warehouses, fields, all the illegal stuff, and obviously the boys that she hung around with were massively into their jungle and drum and bass. And we just kind of identified how different, given how similar we are in age, the different routes that we went down, largely sort of related to the music that we were into. Our sort of experience of clubland culture was massively different, because obviously I did a guest spot on I can't even think what the radio station's called, but this young lad interviewed me, and he was basically interviewed me and Red Hot, and I think the show was called like the history of fashion in garage. I don't know why the fuck he asked me for my thoughts on fashion, because like he was asking me about garms I used to wear and stuff, and I'll be the first to admit, like, I've always been a bit clueless on that kind of thing. I could certainly make observations about people wearing Avirex and that, so we kind of got talking all that. But like one of the things I identified when I was doing this interview was like, I remember like when I first started going clubbing, and possibly it was due to my age, I don't know, I think it was a sign of what garage was and where garage came from. I don't know if this will ring, because I know you're a similar age to me, right, Greg? I don't know if this will ring true with you, but I remember wearing shoes and trousers and putting a shirt on and getting really tarted up to go. Yep. And like, and I remember having a bird, and I would still do it just because it was just it was kind of what you did. I wasn't on the prowl. It was like you went to these garage nights and you dressed smart. You tried to look the part, and there was like that was the culture of the scene, right? And when I was talking to my friend, and like she was talking about the culture of her days. I mean, I think she's a couple of years younger than me, but obviously went down this different route. She was like, I've never got dressed up to go on a night out. I would dress scruffy because I knew I was going out to get absolutely mashed off my tits and not know what the fuck I was listening to, probably end up being sick or whatever. And it was just a fascinating dichotomy to kind of compare the two experiences. And like I was saying to you when we spoke about it, like I never, obviously, like having been to drum and bass raves, like I've been offered pills. You go to different scenes, you get offered different drugs. Like a lot of my mates were massively into drum and bass, and they were getting pills before they went out, or at worst they might get on the ketamine and go. Couldn't really see the point in that myself, but each their own and all that. I don't think I ever got offered anything but coke at garage nights, and I found that fascinating, that the clubland drug of offering appears to be directly related to the type of music that you're listening to. And I think also it's quite apt, really, coke being intrinsically linked to garage is a perfect reflection of the culture and the troubles, certainly around that kind of breakbeat era of garage. I don't think you can really directly attribute it to the music. The music was a reflection of society and culture and what was going on, and probably what was going on in those clubs at the time. I think really, a lot of garage raves were getting shut down, or clubs were refusing to put on garage nights. Police were putting pressure on them, when actually it probably wasn't the music per se. It was the drug culture that kind of went with the scene. I don't really know what I'm trying to say in saying this. Just more of an observation, really, based on my experiences, and I kind of wanted to gauge your thoughts on it. I'm not asking you what your drug of choice is by any means, because that probably wouldn't be an appropriate question to ask.
Right now, it's Buffalo Trace, mate. Right now, it's Buffalo Trace and Diet Coke. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm completely with you, and I mean, garage was singled out, definitely. Like, there was garage was getting banned everywhere in London at one point. It was like no garage allowed in London, because it was seen as a kind of violent night would be put on if you had a garage night. And I think it took a lot of time for that stigma to go away, and it only went away with the departure of garage's popularity. I mean, definitely thinking back to when I used to be a younger man out in Epping Forest Country Club and Atlantis, when they were still existing and not rubble. You'd be wearing your YSL shirt or your Machino shirt and your trousers and your shoes. Definitely going out in shoes. It's like, imagine going out in shoes nowadays. Just the thought of having to stand up for that long on a set of shoes makes me like shudder. Like, how can you not be on air bubbles all night, And it was a standard thing. Yeah, you had to be kind of dressed up. That was it. Shirt, shoes. I think the shirt, shoes got replaced with jeans shirt eventually. But some clubs, most clubs wouldn't let you in if you weren't wearing shoes. Like, some of the scam would be, If you had trainers, it would be give me your socks. I'll put your socks over me trainers, and that's how you blag it in. They wouldn't notice if you got black socks over a pair of trainers, and that worked for some people. That was a thing. I've seen someone on Twitter recently, anecdotally, telling that same story, and it was common. Like it used to happen with my mates, but yeah, I mean, you talk about coke going around a lot in garage, and for me, I mean, all my mates were just puffing. Like there was a few people that were definitely love to jump off the slopes on the weekend and go rampantly skiing, and that affected them in whatever they wanted to, and everyone kind of dabbles, but definitely for me it was I have vivid memories of being in Atlantis in Epping Forest, and it's just suddenly you smell skunk, and it's like, one of my mates has sparked up, because they had to be the ones in the rave that always had to smoke in the rave just to be able to say they did it. And when I go out, I was happy just to drink, and mixing it wasn't always great. But to me, I always associate someone smoking a spliff in a garage rave. There obviously were people that were having a toot when they were out, for sure. But I guess I didn't get on at that early age. I wasn't bang on it then. I wasn't doing that when garage was at its highlight. It was all everyone was drinking. Who can afford to get a bottle of champagne? Because that was the lifestyle. It was shirt, shoes, champagne for a garage rave. MC Creed up front with his bowler hat on, promoting the lifestyle. But yeah, different scenes, as you say. It's definitely different kind of drugs, and I feel like certain scenes couldn't exist without the drugs. It's like I couldn't see like trance or like just heavy kind of techno like existing without a drug culture. Like it's for me, I struggled to understand that people would listen to that of a sober mind, and maybe that's just my own tastes. Every music's got kind of its own thing that you enjoy, and there's stuff that is not for me that might be for you. I completely understand that.
For sure.
But for me,
there's definitely.
Yeah, go on.
I mean, there's a stamina element to it, because like I can before I was into garage, my experience of dance music was I think I've mentioned this before, but like my brother used to have mostly happy hardcore tapes, and I'm talking not like your old school breaky hardcore. I'm talking happy hardcore, late 90s, like 185 beats a minute slamming. He was well into all of that kind of scene. We used to have all the bonkers CDs. And I like a bit of that, and I can sit here and I can listen to a bit of that, and I can appreciate the good elements of it. I've been to a couple of club night stuff. I cannot stay there and do 9 or 10 hours of it. Fuck that. Like I can like it, but like what you're saying about like not understanding how people can do that of a sober mind. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like I like it, but I still couldn't be there for several hours of it. I don't understand how you could do that unless you were off your tits, because once you go past 150, 160 beats a minute, that's pretty full on tempo. You've got to be in a certain mindset, and pharmaceutical help is certainly going to help with that. I don't know. Maybe I'm being stupid in saying that.
Mate, like hospitality, I've been to a couple of hospitality raves for sure, and I love Danny Bird. Danny Bird's the fucking bollocks. Just listening to kind of hype up drum and bass. I love Danny Bird because he's one of the few that is definitely playing live, because he'll clang and joke about it. Whereas there'll be these other people that have got these pre-planned sets. They're probably just pressing play and standing there. A lot of them. But yeah, like I'll go hospitality and I will get off on that music, because that Hospital Records vibe is just it's slightly kind of it's either the real kind of musical stuff that they even call like festival drum and bass or whatever, or it's the hype jump up stuff. And I can go for maybe a Danny Bird set, but then when the next guy comes on and he starts playing the same sort of stuff, I'm starting to think, oh, okay, let's have a little breather. Like I'm pushing my age a bit here, and I don't know whether I can keep up with it. And if I'm not doing bumbles, I don't know how I'm going to keep going.
Yeah,
yeah. You need that help.
I don't even think it's age. Like in your the example of using yourself, I don't even think it's age, because I've always, even when I was much younger and I was going clubbing, like I remember going to Shogun Audio, and I mean the main reason I went there, one of my mates massively wanted to see. I want to say Friction. It was one of the kind of harder drum and bass DJs. I was quite interested in the fact that EZ was playing in the second room. And actually, like, it was the best EZ set I've ever seen, because I think it was like a 2-hour set. And what he basically did was a journey through garage. he did like a timeline. So he started off with old school, and then he basically just moved through the years. It was fantastic. But yeah, I digress. I was much younger then, and even back then, I remember just being like, yeah, like I can't handle too much of this. I don't know. It's fascinating. Like, I think you perfectly, like your experience kind of perfectly mirrored mine in what you've said. I think like weed kind of is almost it transcends all of that. Do you know what I mean? I think weed and skunk is kind of almost a given, irrespective of the scene, right? I think like, I mean, I don't want to get into a debate on whether we should legalize weed and that and all that kind of thing, because obviously that's an entirely different discussion, and we could make a 3-hour podcast on that. But I think that weed is there kind of across the board. What I find interesting about garage, and I don't know if you would agree with this, is that I think of all my mates, all the people I've met over the years through garage, and there's a lot of you like, that I've made good mates from. Yourself, obviously, being a great example. I can't really think of anybody who was going to any of those club nights we used to go to and getting massively on it. You know, when I look back to all of the clubbing that I've done at garage nights, I really don't know that many people. Like I say, like being offered coke, I never really got into coke. Never really kind of interested me. I don't really know many people that did. Do you know what I mean? I know it was there. I know there was a culture of it. I know it caused problems. But it seems like, I almost feel like, and I don't want to say it because I don't want to sound pretentious. I don't want to sound like I'm saying that garage is like a superior intellect music or something. But I almost feel like the people that were truly into garage, I'm talking about the heads, I almost feel like they were there. They didn't need the drugs or have any interest in the drugs. Do you know what I mean?
I'd say the all of the nerds that met up at 4-4 in the Indigo O2 when Todd Edwards debuted No Place Like London. I'd say all of those heads there definitely were not the drug taking type for sure.
It's interesting, man. Like it's like this form of music that attracts people that aren't really into that, and then other forms of music attract. Like, is it the music? Are people taking the drugs so that they can endure more of the music, as you suggested? Is the music secondary to their drug taking? I think that's probably part of it. I think some people don't go out to listen to the music; they go out to get fucked, and having some slamming tunes on in the background is like the bonus to them. So I guess, I don't know. I don't want to say anything sweeping. I don't want to suggest that garage is where the people who are really into music go to listen to it, and people who listen to drum and bass aren't into it. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I'm aware that, like, based on what I've said, it could come across that way. So I'm just clarifying that now. I just find it fascinating, the different kind of cultures, and the different drugs and the different sort of
Every scene has its nerds, guaranteed. For anyone, like, there'll be someone that's listening to here that will be like, "Oh, I'm banging to my techno," and how dare you say I can't listen to that on a Monday morning when I'm stone cold sober? Like, every single scene will have its nerds and its niche somewhere. So maybe just we mingled with more nerds within garage. I don't know.
Possibly. I mean, we are. I think it's fair to say, I will fully admit to being a complete nerd. I wouldn't be able to sit here for several hours a day in front of a computer screen if I wasn't, right? And neither would you. So I guess it figures. I don't know. And it makes sense with us kind of being quite heavily involved in garage that we would kind of affiliate with other people who are heavily involved, who are more into that. So maybe our experience and is based on that. Maybe there are other people listening to the podcast who are going, "Oh, it's garage raves," and I was always banging on the coke. If that's you, drop us an email, feedback at intheukgarage.com, because I'd love to hear other people's experiences and stories. I remember the one thing that strikes me, one story that kind of stands out in my mind, and it isn't sort of directly drug related, but I remember it vividly. I remember speaking to AC. Did you know AC?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember AC. He was like wicked DJ, top fella. Used to go to the prolific club nights at Herbal with him. It was always a laugh. I didn't speak to him for a while, and then he went to not because we had a falling out or anything like that. I just hadn't seen him in a while. And then I remember he basically went to I think it was the Scala. I've got the Scala in my head, and I can't remember what the night was. I think it was like one of the Back to 95 or pioneers of the old school nights or something like that. And I remember speaking to him the following day because I think he posted up on something on Uptown, just being like, "Fuck garage, I'm done." And I remember being like, "What? That's AC. Everyone knows AC loves garage." And I was like, "Mate, you're right." And it turned out he'd gone along, and there was obviously some kerfuffle with some gang, drug-related gang violence. Someone got shot in the head. standing a couple of feet away from him, and it just finished the scene off for him. And that kind of scenario, and the kind of scenario that we talked about that got garage banned from a lot of clubs, wasn't exclusive to garage, but it was more pronounced within garage, I feel. Do you know what I mean? I think there's no smoke without fire. I'm not saying it was related to the music, and like you said, garage got the blame for it when actually the music probably wasn't to blame for it. It was all of the other shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That event of AC witnessing the shooting on the dance floor is why I ended up owning a box full of his records, because he sold all his records, and I bought a shitload off of him.
I didn't know that. Oh, there you go. Big up AC. I don't think he listens. I know he's still around. And he's obviously producing under an alias. And I think
he was
kind of
rebranding to do electro, because electro was a thing as he was changing. But he was a banging DJ. He'd succeed in wherever he went, for sure.
It now produces his Oculist. Does some decent stuff, man, as well.
Big him up. All right,
big up AC.
We're running hot on this. We've been going nearly an hour and a half. Should we go into the feedback section?
Absolutely.
So, based on feedback, you had a little chat, right?
I had a little chat with Merlin. Yeah, we met up and went for lunch down the pub. That's not how a feedback section normally starts. I appreciate that, but obviously I know Merlin outside of the podcast. I don't just casually meet random men in pubs for lunch, despite what the rumours may be. But we were chatting about. On the last podcast, you and I were saying about recycled sounds, and I know that obviously it's something that Merlin feels quite strongly about, and I think he was quite pleased to hear us kind of almost mimic some of the things that he's been saying, in the sense of I think for him it's specifically with drum sounds. Like I quite often get a text from him saying, "Oh, I just listened to this on Beatport. Have you heard it?" And he'll pick out where the drums are nicked from, and it really grinds his gears. So it's interesting that obviously we're not the only ones that kind of identified that goes on, and that perhaps it's, I don't want to say it's wrong. I don't want to chastise anyone for doing it, because, the foundations of dance music are built on essentially plagiarism, right? Sampling, borrowing elements from here and there. Garage has done it a lot over the years. It's kind of a quick route to get in a very authentic, quintessentially garage sounding track, right? To use Grant Nelson sounds, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's also self-limiting. And funnily enough, I was talking to Impact about this after I went on his show earlier. We just sat around and gassed, much like this, for a bit afterwards. And I was saying about how I feel like, and you identified it earlier, right? You picked out an American guy who obviously doesn't have the same background as we do, doesn't have that same palette of sounds and vinyls to steer his drums from, and he's come through with something a bit different. I feel like people constantly recycling is kind of self-limiting, because it's great, you get an authentic sounding garage track, but do you just want to sound like something that someone made 25 years ago? I can't really see the logic in that. Like it'd be all right if you were doing it once in a while, but there are people around who are just constantly attempting to make tunes that sound like they were made in the late 90s, and in doing so just sampling old 90s tunes. And I know obviously we were very vocal and talked at length about that last time, and I had a similar chat in terms of feedback after the show with Merlin. So big up Merlin, UKG's first magician, does his wizardry on Cane FM every Tuesday night. So
I mean it's in the 90s it was different, right? And I think the key thing that held the 90s back in those regards is technology. Sampling was very different then. Now you could, chop a beat up and chuck it into Logic and throw a tune together, much more simpler than you would have done back then. Like the hardware would have existed, but then maybe there would have been too much of an overhead on the processors to do it in the same sort of way you do it nowadays. It was more likely that you do a kind of small sample and you'd use a hardware sampler to kind of play that back. And that's kind of where you'd end up with, someone would nick one drum loop from someone else and then they'd just play it, and then there'd be a little break where you can tell they're repeating it, kind of thing. And I think that technology there led to a different type of sampling, so then you noticed it more back in the late 90s. And there was also the fact that people were using sample CDs that would have a garage break on, and then they'd all just use the same garage break on their tracks. It was a different world back then, and I think think we've progressed so far now. You know, sample packs exist now instead of sample CDs, and they have similar things. And there's definitely been times when I've heard two songs have had exactly the same riff going on in the background somewhere because they've just used the same sample lazily. So the laziness still exists, and sometimes it's hard to spot. But, you know, I do think that I appreciate what Merlin's saying in terms of if they've just done a real lazy sampling, a la 98 style, when they could have moved on way past that from now, that would annoy me too, because it would just be like, build your own beat. Don't just nick someone else's. Like the beat on Marvel and Eli's remix of Whitney Houston, It's Not Right. How many times have you heard that break? That wasn't the first record that it was on. It was on so many different records. Nowadays, I've told you, I'm sure I said this on the previous podcast, the new Amen break for me is Love Suicide by the Midnight Circus. That break on that tune was an original one that Pete wrote with the Midnight Circus, and it's been sampled so many times, and it's because it's just so great. It's just quite distinctive. And I love hearing that that's kind of a popular one that people think no one else can hear, but they're using it lots. I don't know where I'm kind of going with this. I think the last bit I wanted to say on this sampling thing is Smasher. You pulled out Smasher's tune in your notables, new and notable section, and Smasher does nostalgia really, really well. And if you listen to his tunes, he seems to always have like a late 90s, early 2000s garage tune, like break, like sampled in there, like 4 bars or 4 beats, like just slipped in under somewhere, like buried under all these other drums, just to give a nice little nod. And that's kind of like a nice little nostalgic sampling where it's not taking over the whole track. So I'm appreciating that. But I'm with Merlin. If it's a lazy sampling and you're just nicking someone else's beat, then do
you know what? I think you eloquently summarised it perfectly. Like, I literally agree with everything you said there, right down to the I'll make an allowance for Smasher. Totally agree. I think you very eloquently summarised it perfectly in saying that the reason people did it a lot in the 90s was because of technological limitations. And you then went on to say, we don't have those same limitations now. The possibilities of what you can create are endless. And therefore, if you are still doing what they were doing in the late 90s, it could be argued as lazy. I completely get that. I think for myself, looking from a producer's perspective, and I'm not saying I've never borrowed a sound from here and there, because obviously I have, everyone else. I think if it's the occasional bit, fine. If you're routinely building your tracks based on stuff that other people have made, I can't quite get my head around where the satisfaction is in that, because I think that would jar me. Like, I would get to the end of a track and I would just be like, well, I wouldn't feel like I had ownership of it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the way I make tracks, building them from the ground up, and like even my drums now, I source them all differently. I process them all. Do you know what I mean? I want everything to kind of be my own, and that's how I've kind of crafted my own sound. And I think the producers who are really doing big things, like they're doing that. They're crafting their own sound. That's part of the process. That's part of being a producer. Again, that's my subjective analysis of it. I also had something else I was going to say. You raised something else. Midnight Circus. Completely going off topic here for a second, but I think we need to categorically agree right now that next month one of us is going to pinpoint a Midnight Circus track as our forgotten gem, because man, they made some absolute belters, and it's a crime that none of those tracks crossed over into the mainstream. It's only timing. It's nothing else. It was only the timing that stopped them, because man, like Complicated. They had this time where they just, like, Pete and Alex were just churning out these absolute blistering tracks, and
I mean, I spent time with them in the studio.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Putting me on the spot to pick a Midnight Circus one for the next show, because I was going to pick a Duncan. So you know, the big man, it needs to be spoken about.
The big man definitely does. Yeah, he's the other one. All right, like one of us will pick a Duncan and one of us will pick us a Midnight Circus. Right, that's fair to say. I think that's fair. I think they're both overdue a pick.
All right.
I think the obvious one to pick for Midnight Circus would be the remix of "I Want Your Number" that they did for me. Right.
Obvious, totally obvious. And
I'm going to be offended if anything else gets picked.
I completely remember that happened as well. It's definitely the most obvious thing that happened with the Midnight Circus for sure. Let's pick that. Done. You've ruined the next episode already, Rob. What's going on, mate?
Shall we wrap it up there before I give away any other
That sounds
spoilers?
about right. So you can't always give us feedback face to face in the pub, but if you want to kind of stalk us and track us down to give us feedback that way, you're more than welcome to. Also, you can hit us over at feedback@intheukgarage.com or on all of the magical socials, like Twitter, Insta, TikTok, because we're on the TikToks. Hit us at In the UK Garage, and we will read your message, probably give it a thumbs up, and gush over whatever comment it may be, positive or negative. Yeah, we'll wrap this bad boy up. Thank you for giving us your Saturday evening again, Rob. That was
Likewise, mate. Likewise. Like I said, I think of anything I'd rather do than sit and gas about a garage. And funnily enough, I did it all day as well. So it's been a garage-centric day. I'm going to need some time to decompress and just chill out tomorrow, I think. I'm just going to go lazy in the sun, provided it stays up.
just listen to some Justin Bieber or something else. I don't know. Cool. Let's leave it there. Thank you for listening. Hit us at intheukgarage.com. Subscribe in all the usual podcasty places, and we will see you on the next episode.
Laters.